After Japan's last match, hundreds of fans stayed behind in their seats. Not to celebrate, not to film one more video. They pulled out blue trash bags and started cleaning the stadium themselves. Nobody asked them to. Nobody organized it. They just did it, the same way they've done it at every World Cup since 1998. And in the locker room downstairs, the Japanese players did the exact same thing to their own changing room. Folded kits, empty bins, spotless floors, a thank you note left behind for stadium staff. This isn't a one-off story. It's happened after wins. It's happened after losses. It is at this point simply who they are. Think about that for a second. A team that's currently alive in the World Cup, with everything on the line, still pausing to make sure they leave a room better than they found it? No cameras required it? No federation mandated it? It happened anyway, because that's the standard they hold themselves to whether anyone's watching or not. Now that same team is about to walk into a stadium in Houston to face Brazil, five-time champions, the most decorated nation in World Cup history. And if you think the contrast between these two teams ends with a trash bag, you have not been paying attention to this Group F side. This is Brazil versus Japan, round of 32. And it might be the most dangerous match Brazil plays before the final. Here's the thing nobody's saying loudly enough. Japan has already beaten Brazil, not at a World Cup, in a friendly last year in Tokyo. Final score, Japan won. Brazil's players remember it, Brazil's coaching staff remembers it, and Japan's players absolutely remember it. So before a ball is even kicked in Houston, there's history sitting in the room that has nothing to do with 5 stars on a jersey. Stick around, because we're getting into Brazil's actual squad problems, Japan's tactical identity, the player Japan is missing that might decide this entire match, and a prediction that might surprise you. Let's break down Brazil versus Japan. Let's start with how both of these teams actually got here, because the paths could not look more different. Brazil won Group C. 3 matches, 2 wins, 1 draw, and a 3-0 statement victory over Scotland to close it out. Carlo Ancelotti's first major tournament as Brazil's head coach, and on paper, it's gone about as well as it could. 24 years since Brazil's last World Cup. The pressure to end that wait starts getting heavier from here. Japan, meanwhile, went through Group F unbeaten. A 2-2 draw with the Netherlands to open, a win over Tunisia, and a 1-1 draw with Sweden to close out the group in second place. 5 points, 0 losses, and a defensive identity that's given absolutely nobody an easy night. And here's where it gets genuinely interesting. Japan's head coach Hajime Moriyasu openly said before the final group match that finishing second instead of first was actually preferable because second place sent Japan to Houston to face Brazil on a route the team had already prepared for. Japan trained specifically for this exact possibility. While most teams are scared of the 5-time champions, Japan looked at the bracket and saw an opponent they'd already studied. That's not a small thing. That's a team walking into this match with a plan, not just hope. Now about that cleaning tradition. It first showed up at Japan's World Cup debut in 1998. It's followed them to Russia, to Qatar, and now to North America. After their draw with the Netherlands in Texas, fans stayed behind with blue bags, and even an NFL quarterback working as a broadcaster jumped in to help collect bottles. After their draw with Sweden, they did it again. Sociologists studying this call it cultural instinct, not performance, the idea that you simply don't leave behind a mess for someone else to deal with. It's such a normal habit in Japan that fans interviewed about it usually look a little confused that anyone finds it remarkable at all. But here's the connection that actually matters for Saturday. That same discipline, that same care for structure and order shows up on the pitch. This is not a flashy team chasing chaos. This is a team that organizes itself, holds its shape, and waits for exactly the right moment to strike. The locker room habits and the playing style come from the same place. Let's talk about Brazil, because despite winning their group, this is not a simple story of total dominance. The headline issue is Neymar. Brought back into the squad after years away from the national team, battling a calf injury that kept him out of Brazil's first 2 matches entirely. He finally got onto the pitch as a substitute against Scotland, his first World Cup minutes in nearly 3 years. The emotion of that moment was real. The football reality is more complicated. A 34-year-old returning from injury with limited match sharpness is not the same Neymar from a decade ago. Whether Ancelotti trusts him with significant minutes against a side this well organized is one of the biggest selection questions of the entire round of 32. Then there's Rafinha, ruled out through a hamstring injury picked up against Haiti, which has already forced changes to Brazil's attacking shape. And here's a quieter problem that barely gets mentioned. Both Casemiro and Douglas Santos picked up yellow cards earlier in the group stage, putting them one caution away from a suspension. Ancelotti already rotated both of them out of the lineup against Scotland specifically to protect them for this match. That tells you the coaching staff is thinking about Japan as a genuine threat, not a formality. So Brazil arrives in Houston with a returning legend who isn't fully sharp, a winger missing through injury, and two defensive starters who have to play this match with the kind of caution that slows decision-making in big moments. None of that shows up on a stat sheet that just says Group C winners. All of it matters on Saturday. There's also the broader squad picture to consider. Ancelotti came into this job as one of the most decorated club managers in history, but international football strips away a lot of what made him successful at that level. There's no week-to-week training ground to fine-tune chemistry. There's a handful of matches to get an entire nation's expectations right, with players arriving from different leagues, different rhythms, different physical conditions. Every selection decision against Japan carries weight that a midweek Champions League rotation never would. Now flip to Japan, because their problems are smaller in number but specific in impact. Take Fusa Kubo, arguably Japan's most dangerous individual attacker, picked up a knee injury against the Netherlands in the opening match and hasn't featured since. He wasn't even on the bench against Sweden. Reports out of the camp suggest his chances of returning are fading the further the tournament goes, and Real Madrid's own medical updates on him have stayed cautious. Losing Kubo removes Japan's clearest individual difference maker, the player most likely to create something out of nothing against a deep, talented Brazilian backline. But here's what makes Japan dangerous anyway. They don't rely on one player. Ao Tanaka stepped in and started contributing in midfield immediately. Daichi Kamada has scored. Keito Nakamura has scored. Captain Ko Itakura has organized a back three that's conceded just 3 goals in 3 matches against quality opposition. This is a team built on a system, not a single name, which, ironically, is the exact opposite of the pressure Brazil has carried for 24 years. Goalkeeper Zion Suzuki deserves a mention too. Several genuinely difficult saves against the Netherlands kept Japan in that opening match when a lesser performance behind him would have ended their tournament before it started. A goalkeeper playing with that kind of composure against a stronger opponent is exactly the foundation a disciplined defensive structure needs to actually hold up under pressure. So here's the matchup underneath the matchup. Brazil's plan has always run through individual brilliance. Give the ball to a genius, let him solve the problem. Japan's entire defensive identity is built to make that specific plan as difficult as humanly possible. Compact shape, minimal space between the lines, and the discipline to wait for the exact right moment to spring forward. Vinicius Jr. is the man most likely to be asked to break that shape open. He's been Brazil's most consistent attacking threat through the group stage, the player Ancelotti is building the entire forward line around. Against a mid-block, this disciplined, isolated moments of individual quality might be the only route through. One mistimed challenge, one half-yard of space, and Vinicius can finish it. Japan knows that. Expect their right side, wherever Vinicius operates, to get extra defensive attention all match long. On the other side of the ball, watch Japan's transitions. Daisen Maeda's pace in behind is the release valve for all that defensive patience. The moment Japan wins the ball back, his job is to turn defense into attack in seconds before Brazil's backline can reorganize. If Brazil commits numbers forward and gets caught out of shape even once, this is exactly the kind of team punished for it. Just ask the Netherlands, who needed a stoppage-time own goal just to escape Japan with a draw. There's also the head-to-head history worth knowing. These two have met 4 times. Brazil has the edge overall, but the most recent meeting, that friendly in Tokyo last year, ended in a Japan win. It wasn't a World Cup match. The stakes were lower, but it's the most recent data point either dressing room actually has, and it's the one in Japan's favor. One more wrinkle worth watching: the heat and humidity of a Houston summer afternoon. Brazil's players are largely based in Europe now, accustomed to cooler club seasons. Japan's squad, drawn from both home-based players and a growing number in Europe, has spent this entire tournament adapting to North American conditions already. Conditioning in the final 20 minutes of a tight match could matter just as much as anything either coach draws up on a tactics board. Let's zoom out, because the stakes here go well beyond bragging rights. For Brazil, this is about ending a 24-year wait for a 6th World Cup, and Ancelotti's first real test as a tournament manager outside club football. Get past Japan, and the bracket potentially opens up toward a deep run. Lose here, and it's the second time this century Brazil has been knocked out by a team most pundits had written off entirely. For Japan, advancing past the round of 32 would be the furthest they've ever gone at a World Cup. Both previous trips to the knockouts, in 2018 and 2022, ended right here, at the first hurdle. Beat Brazil, and that ceiling gets shattered in the most dramatic way imaginable. Neither side is treating this like a formality. Moriyasu spent the entire week reminding his players that Brazil is more vulnerable now than the shirt suggests. Ancelotti spent his press conference being careful, almost too careful, to praise Japan's structure and discipline rather than dismiss them. All right, prediction time. I think Brazil's individual quality just barely gets them through, but not comfortably. I'm calling it 2-1 to Brazil. Vinicius scores the goal that actually breaks Japan's resistance, probably in the second half once gaps start opening up from fatigue. Japan gets something back through a set piece or a transition moment, the kind of goal their structure is built to manufacture, even against the best teams in the world. The turning point: whether Brazil can score first. If Vinicius or Neymar find an early goal, Japan's patient approach gets forced into urgency they're not built for, and the gaps start appearing. If it's still scoreless past the hour mark, Brazil's nerves and 24 years of pressure become the story, not Japan's discipline. Standout player, regardless of outcome, Vinicius Jr. for Brazil, simply because the entire attacking plan funnels through him. But don't be shocked if Awatanaka, the man who replaced an injured Kubo and never looked back, ends up being the name everyone's talking about by the final whistle. The concern for Brazil that doesn't show up in the betting odds: composure. Two defenders managing card risk, a returning star still finding his rhythm, and 24 years of accumulated weight walking into a match against a team that has shown, on paper and in a friendly, that it knows exactly how to make Brazil uncomfortable. And one more scenario worth preparing for: extra time. If neither side breaks the deadlock inside 90 minutes, this becomes a different kind of test entirely. Japan's discipline tends to hold up under fatigue better than flashier sides because their game was never built on individual sprints in the first place. Brazil, by contrast, leans heavily on moments of brilliance from tired legs, and brilliance is the first thing to disappear when a match drags past the hour mark in Houston heat. So here's where this actually lands. Brazil, the most decorated nation in the sport, carrying real questions into a match they're still favored to win. And Japan, the team that cleans its own locker room and the stadium around it, walking in with no fear, a plan they specifically prepared for, and a recent result that says they've already done this once before. Whatever happens in Houston, one thing is already certain. When the final whistle blows, somebody's section of that stadium is getting cleaned up afterward. The only real question is whether Japan's players get to do it as winners, or whether 24 years of waiting finally starts feeling a little shorter for Brazil. Either way, this is the kind of match that gets remembered long after the bracket fills in around it. Not because of the scoreline alone, but because of what it reveals about both teams heading into the rest of the tournament. Can Japan do what they did in that friendly and pull off the actual upset? Or does Brazil's talent finally take over when it matters most? Drop your score prediction below, and if you want the breakdown the moment this one ends, you know what to do. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and I'll see you for the post-match reaction. See you then.